The sound that shattered Japanese defensive doctrine first echoed across Guadalcanal beaches on August 7, 1942. Winchester Model 12 shotguns spoke with deadly authority. American Marines waded through surf at Beach Red. Their weapons would rewrite the rules of Pacific warfare. Pre-dawn darkness concealed the advancing Marines. They moved inland from landing zones. Japanese defensive positions waited near the longer river. What unfolded in those first encounters revealed catastrophic flaws in Imperial Army planning. Distance rifle combat was expected. Bayonet charges at close range were prepared for. Sword work in intimate fighting was rehearsed endlessly. Nobody had prepared for American shotguns. These weapons fired as rapidly as operators could pump the action. Mechanical reality was about to demolish Japanese tactical assumptions. The devastation would spread across every Pacific island. 2,200 Japanese defenders held Guadalcanal. They were about to discover American innovation in close combat weapons. These same weapons had nearly been banned from warfare in 1918. Germany had protested their use. The Winchester Model 12 could fire multiple shells in rapid succession. Jungle warfare would prove its perfect environment. Cave fighting would demonstrate its lethality. Night combat would showcase its psychological impact. Combat mathematics were changing forever. 9 pellets of double-aught buckshot filled each shell. 6 shells could fire in under 3 seconds using slam fire technique. 54 projectiles would saturate target areas in those 3 seconds. Japanese soldiers needed a full minute to fire that many bullets with bolt-action rifles. World War I had established the shotgun's fearsome reputation. American forces used earlier models with devastating effect in French trenches. September 15, 1918, brought formal German protest through Swiss diplomatic channels. U.S. State Department archives preserve the complaint. Shotguns allegedly violated Article 23E of the Hague Convention. The weapons caused unnecessary suffering according to German claims. The German government delivered stark warnings. Any prisoner found carrying shotguns or ammunition would forfeit his life. Secretary of State Robert Lansing responded with absolute clarity. The United States rejected all protests. American forces would continue using shotguns. Any execution of American prisoners would bring swift reprisals. No American soldiers died for carrying shotguns. Their use expanded throughout the war. The Model 12 had entered combat in 1912 as a civilian hunting weapon. Significant evolution occurred by 1942. Military versions received the M12 trench gun designation. 20-inch cylinder-bore barrels replaced 26 30-inch civilian models. Perforated metal heat shields protected operators. Bayonet lugs enabled close combat versatility. Most critically, trigger disconnectors were deliberately omitted. This mechanical feature enabled slam firing capability. Winchester engineers had planned this carefully. Holding the trigger while pumping would fire continuously. Civilian shooters rarely exploited this feature. Military trainers recognized combat potential immediately. The Imperial Japanese Army had built Pacific strategy on documented assumptions. U.S. War Department Technical Manual TME 30480 analyzed Japanese military forces in 1944. 2 primary tactical advantages formed Japanese doctrine. Night fighting provided the first advantage. Close combat offered the second advantage. Kishu meant night surprise attack. Kyoshu indicated night force attack. Infantry training devoted extensive hours to darkness operations. Silent infiltration techniques were practiced relentlessly. Movement in darkness became second nature. The assumption had proven valid in China and early Pacific victories. Night combat negated American firepower advantages. Technology meant nothing in darkness, according to Japanese thinking. Training manuals emphasized American weakness in close combat. Mechanical superiority was their only advantage. When combat reached bayonet range, Japanese doctrine asserted superiority. Superior spirit would prevail. Superior training would dominate. This belief shaped fundamental tactical planning. Singapore's fall in February 1942 validated these assumptions. Japanese forces overwhelmed British positions through aggressive night attacks. Close combat defeated numerically superior forces. Philippine victories reinforced these convictions. Americans could not match Japanese soldiers in close quarters. Western forces lacked proper warrior spirit. Guadalcanal's invasion on August 7, 1942, marked America's first offensive operation. Marine units carried Winchester Model 12 shotguns among their equipment. Distribution focused on jungle patrol personnel. Point defense units received priority. Security duties required close-range firepower. Equipment manifests included riot-type shotguns in infantry battalions. Ammunition supplies contained buckshot and slug rounds. The Tanaru battle provided the first major test. Actually, the Ilu River. The location was misidentified initially. August 21, 1942, brought Colonel Kiyonao Ichiki's assault. 916 men of his detachment attacked at night. They crossed the sandbar at the river's mouth. This represented exactly the close combat night attack that Japanese doctrine prescribed. The outcome proved catastrophic for Japanese forces. Of 916 attackers, approximately 800 died. Marine machine guns inflicted many casualties. Artillery added to the destruction. Close-range fighting saw shotgun employment in their intended role. After-action reports noted effectiveness of all available weapons. Specific mention highlighted increased firepower value at close range. The Model 12's effectiveness derived from technical characteristics that Army ordnance had tested thoroughly. Military loads of double-aught buckshot contained 9.33 caliber lead pellets. 20 yards distance maintained sufficient velocity for penetration. 3/4-inch pine boards represented standard tissue penetration tests. The spread pattern proved equally important. Combat ranges of 20 to 30 yards produced approximately 30-inch spreads. Pattern density made precise aiming unnecessary. This characteristic proved crucial in jungle warfare. Targets appeared as fleeting glimpses through dense vegetation. Slam fire capability multiplied these advantages exponentially. No precise rate measurements from World War II exist. Post-war testing demonstrated experienced operators could fire 5 to 6 rounds in under 3 seconds. This rate exceeded many automatic weapons at close range. The spreading pattern provided additional advantages. Marines developed specific employment techniques for the Model 12. Training emphasized firing at ground level against crawling infiltrators. Ricochet effects of buckshot on hard ground were exploited. Jungle settings required firing at sound and movement. Clear targets were rare luxuries. The spread pattern compensated for imprecise aiming. Marine units gained experience through 1942 and 1943. Shotgun employment became increasingly sophisticated. Specific tactical situations occurred repeatedly in Pacific combat. The weapons proved particularly valuable in documented scenarios. New Georgia campaign ran from June to August 1943. Shotguns were increasingly assigned to point men on jungle patrols. Immediate devastating firepower response to ambush proved invaluable. Marines' walking point could react to movement or sound with instant suppressive fire. Single shots could hit multiple enemies. Night defensive positions incorporated shotguns as primary weapons against infiltration. Japanese tactics involved small groups penetrating Marine lines in darkness. Stealth and blade weapons were their preferred tools. Marines with shotguns could cover sectors with overlapping fields of fire. Zones where infiltration became virtually impossible were created. Jungle lane shooting became another application. Dense vegetation provided concealment for Japanese soldiers. Spread patterns would strike multiple obstacles. Concealed enemies could be hit while simultaneously stripping away foliage. The Central Pacific Islands campaign introduced new tactical challenges. Japanese cave fortifications represented evolved defensive thinking. Tarawa in November 1943 began the escalation. Subsequent operations faced increasingly sophisticated cave defenses. Colonel Kunio Nakagawa had prepared elaborate cave defense systems at Peleliu. September 15, 1944 began the Peleliu assault. The island's coral ridges were honeycombed with natural caves. Japanese engineers had expanded and fortified these positions. Naval bombardment and aerial attack were designed to be withstood. Intimate close-range combat was required for clearing. The Model 12 proved adaptable to cave-clearing challenges. Marines developed specific techniques exploiting shotgun characteristics. Standard approaches involved firing 1 or 2 shells into cave entrances. Buckshot ricocheted off interior walls predictably. Ricocheting pellets created what Marines described as lead storms inside confined spaces. Physical effects often were exceeded by psychological impact. Japanese soldiers who survived reported unique terror. The sound of ricocheting buckshot in caves was distinctly frightening. Metallic shrieking seemed to come from all directions simultaneously. Saipan's invasion on June 15, 1944, saw continued tactical evolution. The Japanese garrison numbered 31,000 troops under Lieutenant General Yoshitsugu Saito. Extensive fortifications had been prepared. Previous American assaults had provided lessons. Marine units developed shotgun teams as specialized groups. Close-range assault was their primary mission. Teams typically consisted of 2 shotgun-armed Marines. 1 bar provided suppressive fire. 1 or 2 riflemen carried grenades. Specialized assault elements proved particularly effective against fortified positions. The Saipan battle also saw increased use of specialized ammunition. Double-aught buckshot remained standard issue. Solid slug rounds provided longer-range precision fire. Smaller birdshot loads stripped vegetation to expose hidden positions. July 7, 1944, brought Saipan's largest Japanese banzai charge. Approximately 3,000 to 4,000 attackers assaulted American positions. Machine guns and artillery inflicted most casualties. Close-range fighting penetrated American lines in some areas. Extensive use of all available weapons occurred, including shotguns. Multiple projectiles without precise aiming proved valuable. Confused melee of night combat suited shotgun capabilities. Iwo Jima represented the ultimate test of cave warfare tactics. February 19 to March 26, 1945 encompassed the battle duration. General Tadamichi Kuribayashi had created the war's most sophisticated defensive system. 11 miles of tunnels connected over 1,500 caves, pillboxes, and fortified positions. Kuribayashi had studied American tactics from previous battles. His defenses were designed to counter established American methods. Cave entrances were angled to prevent direct fire. Multiple exits prevented entrapment. Interior chambers were offset to limit explosive and flamethrower effects. Despite these preparations, Model 12 shotguns remained effective. Marines adapted by developing skip shooting techniques. Deliberately banking buckshot off tunnel walls reached around corners. White phosphorus shells increased their use. Both casualties and smoke were created. Japanese soldiers were forced to evacuate positions. 21,000 Japanese defenders were gradually eliminated. Brutal, close-range fighting characterized the elimination process. Only 216 were taken prisoner. Most were wounded or unconscious when captured. The nature of Iwo Jima fighting emphasized eliminating fortified positions at close range. Weapons like the Model 12 maintained relevance despite overall warfare mechanization. Okinawa's invasion on April 1, 1945, represented the Pacific War's largest amphibious operation. General Mitsuru Ushijima commanded 100,000 Japanese troops. The most extensive defensive network yet constructed protected the island. Colonel Hiromichi Yahara was Ushijima's operations officer. One of Japan's most brilliant staff officers, Yahara had designed the defense. Maximizing American casualties was the primary objective. Both sides had learned from 3 years of Pacific combat. Japanese forces no longer wasted themselves in banzai charges. Fighting occurred from prepared positions. American forces had refined combined arms tactics. Shotguns played specific roles in close combat phases. Cave and bunker reduction required intimate fighting. The 82-day campaign saw full evolution of American cave clearing techniques. Marines and Army troops employed blowtorch and corkscrew tactics. Flamethrowers provided the blowtorch element. Demolitions and close-range weapons like shotguns served as corkscrews. Penetrating positions required this combination. Winchester Company records analyzed by historian Herbert G. House reveal actual production numbers. Only 61,014 Model 12 shotguns were manufactured during World War II. An additional 19,207 were repaired or refurbished by Winchester. Total numbers created confusion from these repairs. Distribution occurred across all service branches. Marines, Army, Navy, and Army Air Forces all received weapons. Marine units did not receive exclusive allocation. Army Air Forces used Model 12s for air-based defense and aircraft guard duties. Navy employed them for ship security and landing party operations. Relatively limited production meant specialized rather than general issue. 61,014 new weapons for a military of 12 million represented careful allocation. Concentration occurred in units expected to face close combat. Marine rifle companies received priority. Army assault teams were equipped. Security detachments received allocations. Ammunition supply proved more abundant than weapons. Military contracts for shotgun shells reached millions of rounds. Units equipped with shotguns had adequate ammunition for training and combat. Standard military loads were .00 Buckshot. Slug rounds were available for specific purposes. Smaller shot sizes served specialized functions. Evaluating Model 12 combat effectiveness requires careful evidence analysis. After-action reports from Pacific battles consistently noted shotgun value in specific situations. Limitations were acknowledged alongside advantages. Several scenarios consistently showed weapon excellence across different battles. Jungle ambush response demonstrated immediate devastating firepower delivery. Sudden contact at close range required instant reaction. Spread patterns compensated for target acquisition difficulty in dense vegetation. Cave defense provided effective protection against infiltration attempts. Pump-action cycling sounds became psychological deterrents. Spread patterns increased hit probability in darkness. Cave and bunker clearing exploited ricochet effects in confined spaces. Direct hits were not always achieved. Psychological impact of buckshot ricocheting in enclosed spaces often forced Japanese soldier evacuation. Final assault phases at ranges under 25 yards showed shotgun superiority. Bolt-action rifles and some automatic weapons were outclassed. Clear limitations existed alongside advantages. Effective range of 50 yards or less left shotgun-armed troops vulnerable. Rifle fire at longer ranges created dangerous exposure. Ammunition was bulky and heavy compared to rifle rounds. Frequent cleaning was required in corrosive saltwater Pacific environments. Japanese forces attempted various countermeasures to American close combat weapons. Shotguns were specifically addressed in these adaptations. Captured Japanese materials and post-war interrogations documented both perceived threat and counter difficulty. Body armor experiments included thick wooden or bamboo plates. Buckshot stopping was the intended purpose. These proved cumbersome and only partially effective. Exposed areas remained vulnerable to disabling injuries. Tactical adaptations included increasing defensive position depth. Infiltration by assault teams was prevented. False positions absorbed initial attacks. Obstacles maintained engagement distances beyond shotgun range. Despite these efforts, fully effective counters never developed. The fundamental problem was material shortage. Japan lacked industrial capacity to match American firepower at any range. Continued reliance on tactics bringing close-range fights was forced. These were precisely the ranges where weapons like the Model 12 excelled. The German protest of 1918 regarding shotgun use created legal precedent, influencing World War II employment. American rejection of German protests established shotguns as legitimate weapons of war under international law. Despite Model 12 effectiveness against Japanese forces, Japan never filed similar protests. Several factors may explain this absence. Japan's conduct in China had violated numerous international conventions. Legal protests became problematic. Deteriorating diplomatic situations left few channels for protests. By the time shotguns proved particularly effective, Japan was already losing decisively. Legal acceptance of shotguns contrasted with restrictions on other weapons. Poison gas, banned after World War I, was not used in the Pacific. Tactical advantages in cave warfare might have been provided. The shotgun, despite devastating close-range effects, remained within accepted warfare bounds. The Marine Corps developed specific training programs for shotgun employment based on combat experience. The Scouts and Snipers School at Camp Lejeune included shotgun training. Exact curriculum from World War II has not survived in detail. Training emphasized several key principles derived from combat experience. Ammunition management differed significantly from rifle ammunition. Shotgun shells were bulky and heavy. Marines learned to carry shells in elastic loops on belts and bandoliers. Rapid access was essential. Standard loads were 50-60 shells. Resupply became a constant concern. Pump-action operation required different stances than rifle shooting. Marines practiced firing from the hip during movement. Point shooting without using sights was emphasized. Balance maintenance while cycling action rapidly was crucial. Target selection principles were developed through experience. Shotgunners learned to engage closest threats first. Sweeping across multiple targets rather than focusing on individuals was practiced. Spread patterns meant precise aiming was less important than rapid target engagement. Weapon maintenance in Pacific environments was particularly challenging. Salt spray, sand, and humidity could quickly render Model 12s inoperable. Daily maintenance became essential. Emphasis was placed on keeping actions clean and lubricated. American shotgun use in World War II was relatively unique among major combatants. Different nations' approaches to close combat revealed varying tactical philosophies. British military made limited shotgun use. Primarily, prisoner guard duties and specialized operations employed them. British doctrine emphasized submachine guns. The Sten gun was particularly favored for close combat. Soviet Union relied heavily on the PPSH-41 submachine gun for close combat. Over 6 million were used during the war. High rates of fire and larger magazine capacity suited Soviet mass assault tactics. Despite protesting shotgun use in World War I, Germany produced limited shotgun numbers for Eastern Front combat. However, the MP-40 submachine gun remained their primary close combat weapon. Japan produced virtually no combat shotguns. Focus remained on rifles, bayonets, and traditional blade weapons for close combat. Both industrial limitations and cultural preferences influenced this decision. American shotgun adoption reflected pragmatic warfare approaches. The most effective tool for specific situations was used regardless of traditional military conventions. Understanding Model 12 roles requires placing them within broader American combat doctrine context in the Pacific. The weapon was one element in combined arms approaches. Naval gunfire, air support, artillery, automatic weapons, flamethrowers, and demolitions were integrated. Typical sequences for reducing Japanese fortified positions by 1945 illustrate this integration. Naval gunfire and aerial bombardment suppressed and isolated positions. Artillery and mortars prevented reinforcement. Machine guns and bar fire suppressed defensive fire. Assault teams approached with flamethrowers and demolitions. Shotguns were employed in final assault phases to clear positions. Engineers sealed or destroyed positions afterward. Shotgun roles were specific but important. Overwhelming close-range firepower was provided in critical moments. Americans and Japanese soldiers met at distances measured in feet rather than yards. Weapon psychological impact often exceeds physical effects. Model 12s had demonstrable effects on both American and Japanese morale. These must be assessed carefully, given propaganda and mythology surrounding weapons. American forces gained confidence in close combat situations. Marines and soldiers knew they possessed devastating firepower at short range. Anxiety about Japanese infiltration and banzai charges was reduced. Mechanical simplicity and reliability of Model 12s also inspired confidence. Jamming rarely occurred. Operation under stress remained simple. The distinctive sound of pump action cycling became a morale factor itself. Veterans reported the sound reassured friendly troops, while potentially deterring enemy action. This psychological effect appears consistently in veteran accounts, despite difficulty in quantification. After Japan's surrender, extensive U.S. military analysis of weapons effectiveness in the Pacific War occurred. Model 12 and other shotguns received mixed assessments. Exceptional effectiveness in specific situations was credited. Particularly, cave clearing and night defense showed advantages. Multiple projectile delivery without precise aiming proved valuable. Confused close-range fighting, common in the Pacific, suited shotgun characteristics. Analysts also noted significant limitations. Short range left shotgun-armed troops vulnerable in open terrain. Japanese bunkers with small firing apertures were less effectively engaged. Logistical burden of supplying specialized ammunition complicated supply operations. Despite these limitations, shotguns remained in U.S. military inventory. Model 12s served in Korea, where they again proved effective in close combat and night fighting. Vietnam saw shotgun employment by point men on patrols and tunnel-clearing operations. Pacific lessons were directly applied. Model 12 mechanical design influenced subsequent military shotguns. Pump-action mechanisms proved more reliable in combat conditions than semi-automatic designs. Slam fire capability was eventually eliminated for civilian safety reasons. Military applications continued to value this feature. Historical records of Model 12 employment in World War II come from multiple sources. Each source has inherent limitations requiring careful analysis. Official after-action reports provide tactical overviews, but rarely detail individual weapon employment. References to shotguns typically appear only when noting special effectiveness or problems. Unit equipment records document shotgun distribution, but not actual combat use. Many records were lost or destroyed during the war. Technical manuals describe weapon operation and basic employment, but not specific combat experiences. Veteran accounts from post-war memoirs and oral histories provide anecdotal evidence. These must be evaluated carefully for accuracy and representation. Japanese records, including captured documents and post-war interrogations, provide enemy perspective. Translation issues and destruction of many Japanese records limit these sources. Photographic evidence occasionally shows Marines with shotguns in combat photographs. However, effectiveness cannot be documented through photographs alone. This fragmentary evidence requires careful analysis to separate documented fact from mythology and assumption. Model 12 employment highlighted the vast industrial and technological gap between the United States and Japan. American forces could afford specialized weapons for specific tactical situations. Industrial capacity to produce 61,414 shotguns represented overwhelming material superiority. These were weapons with limited military application produced while simultaneously manufacturing millions of rifles. Hundreds of thousands of machine guns were also produced. Tens of thousands of artillery pieces demonstrated industrial dominance. Japan conversely struggled to provide basic rifles and ammunition to forces. The Japanese Type 99 rifle, excellent in design, suffered from declining manufacturing quality as war progressed. By 1945, Japanese forces were fielding bamboo spears alongside rifles. Industrial collapse was highlighted by this disparity. The gap extended to ammunition supplies. American forces could expend shotgun shells freely in training and combat. Standard procedure called for using fresh ammunition. Shells showing any corrosion or damage were discarded. Japanese forces, meanwhile, counted every rifle cartridge. Captured ammunition was often relied upon. Shotgun tactics development in the Pacific demonstrates American military adaptability. Unlike rigid military hierarchies imposing tactics from above, American forces encouraged small unit-level innovation. Marines discovering effective techniques shared them informally. Successful methods spread through units by word of mouth and demonstration. Officers incorporated proven techniques into training and doctrine. This bottom-up innovation process allowed rapid tactical adaptation. Skip shooting technique for cave clearing appears to have developed independently in multiple units facing similar challenges. Marines discovered buckshot would ricochet predictably off rock walls. Shooting around corners became possible. This technique, born of necessity and experimentation, became standard procedure. Mixed ammunition load use, alternating buckshot and slug rounds, developed from combat experience rather than pre-war doctrine. Marines learned the combination provided flexibility in engaging varied targets without changing weapons. While tactical weapons like Model 12 played important roles, Pacific War outcome was determined by larger strategic factors. American submarine warfare strangled Japanese logistics. Strategic bombing destroyed Japanese industry. Naval supremacy isolated Japanese garrisons. Atomic bombs ended Japanese resistance without invasion. Within this strategic framework, weapons like Model 12 contributed to tactical success, supporting operational and strategic objectives. Efficient reduction of Japanese positions conserved American manpower. Offensive momentum was maintained. Futility of continued resistance was demonstrated. Shotgun effectiveness in cave clearing reduced casualties in grinding attrition battles of 1944 to 1945. Each fortified position cleared quickly meant fewer American casualties and faster advance to strategic objectives. Airfields and ports represented these crucial strategic objectives. Model 12 employment in the Pacific offers lessons about military innovation and adaptation. Existing technology found new applications. Model 12 was a 30-year-old design when World War II began. Innovation came not from new technology, but from applying existing technology to new tactical problems. User-driven innovation proved most effective. Bottom-up experimentation by combat users generated tactics rather than top-down doctrine development. Specialized versus general-purpose capabilities required balance. Model 12 excelled in specific situations but had clear limitations. Military forces must balance specialized capabilities with general-purpose requirements. Training and technology must work together. Weapon effectiveness depended on proper training. Technology alone without doctrine and training provides limited advantage. Industrial base capabilities determine equipment possibilities. Ability to produce and supply specialized weapons and ammunition depends on robust industrial capacity. Tactical innovation requires logistical support. Behind technical and tactical analysis were human beings. American Marines and soldiers carried Model 12s into combat. Japanese soldiers faced these weapons. Their experiences, filtered through memory and mythology, provide essential perspective. Marines carrying shotguns often did so by choice. Longer range of rifles was traded for devastating close-range firepower. This decision reflected individual assessment of tactical requirements and personal preference. Some Marines swore by shotgun effectiveness. Others preferred rifle versatility. Weapon operation under combat stress-tested human capabilities. Slam firing required physical strength and coordination while under fire. Techniques seeming simple in training became challenging when exhausted, terrified, or wounded. Yet Marines consistently performed these actions effectively in combat. Winchester Model 12 employment in Pacific War demonstrated both American military adaptability and industrial capability. The weapon proved exceptionally effective in specific tactical situations. Cave clearing, night defense, jungle ambush response, and final assault phases showed particular effectiveness. Slam fire capability provided devastating close-range firepower that Japanese forces struggled to counter. However, Model 12 impact must be understood within proper context. Only 61,414 were produced during World War II. This made it a specialized weapon rather than primary infantry arm. Effectiveness depended on integration with other weapons in combined arms tactics. Pacific War outcome was determined by strategic factors far beyond tactical weapons. Japanese military failure to anticipate or counter American shotgun employment reflected broader miscalculations about American military capabilities. Japanese doctrine emphasized spiritual factors and individual warrior skills. American material superiority and tactical innovation were underestimated. Model 12, simple in design but devastating in application, embodied pragmatic American warfare approaches. From Guadalcanal to Okinawa, through jungles and caves, distinctive sounds of pump action cycling marked American tactical innovation. Marines and soldiers armed with Model 12s demonstrated that industrial democracy could develop and employ specialized weapons for specific tactical challenges. The weapon Germany had protested as inhumane proved to be simply another tool in American arsenal. Model 12 legacy extends beyond World War II. Pacific-developed tactics influenced American military doctrine through Korea, Vietnam, and contemporary conflicts. Emphasis on close combat firepower, specialized weapons for specific situations, and user-driven tactical innovation remains relevant to modern warfare. Japanese infantry never expected Winchester M12 trench guns to slam fire through their defenses. Such weapons violated fundamental assumptions about warfare. Model 12 delivered a simple message. American forces would apply overwhelming firepower at every range. Every available technology would be used. Continuous innovation would adapt methods. In brutal arithmetic of Pacific combat, Model 12 added its weight to scales of American victory. Transformation was complete not through Model 12 alone, but through what it represented. American willingness to embrace any effective weapon was demonstrated. Innovative tactics were developed continuously. Industrial production was applied to tactical problems. Japanese infantry facing these weapons discovered their opponents had mastered not just war's art, but its science. Systematically applying firepower to destroy any defense, overcome any obstacle, and achieve victory through material superiority, combined with tactical innovation, became the American way of war. The Model 12 was merely one instrument in this overwhelming orchestra of destruction.